Hey, aloha, everybody. Man, thank you so much for being here, watching this video. I wanted to take time to be with my family and priority. My youngest daughter, yes, thank you, is finally graduating, and that is tomorrow. And so I wanted to get this video recorded and out to you today so we don't skip a beat on things. But I wanted to talk to you about something that I call the invisible software of life. Right. It's something that quietly controls almost every result of our life. And most people spend their lives trying to change outcomes, right? Versus they try to change money and relationships and health and business and the circumstances and so forth, but very seldom do people ever stop long enough to ask what is producing these outcomes. Right? Because think about it. If I walked into your office and your computer was acting strangely, you wouldn't start yelling at the screen, right? You would look deeper. You would ask the question, what software is running? What program is operating underneath this machine? Right? What is happening? What is it's all about the operating system, right? So tonight I want to suggest that your life works exactly the same. Excuse me, because every one of us is operating from an invisible software. Okay, and most people never examine that. Tonight is about, excuse me, tonight is about becoming aware of that operating system that's running your life. The simple thing is having the awareness of that software, that operating system changes everything. Everything, right? Most people believe they are reacting to life, but what is actually happening is they were responding from the programming, right? Someone says something, a reaction appears, the challenge arrives, a reaction appear, money gets tight, a reaction appear, relationship struggles, a reaction appears, right? Most people think that the reactions are who they are, but they're not. They're not. They're simply programs, guys. Programs installed over years, programs that are inherited by our parents or from our parents, learned from teachers, reinforced by society, right? Programs are repeated until they become or became automatic, right? Because it's write this down. Anything repeated long enough begins to feel like the truth, even when it isn't. Right? We were told all our lives, watch out for the little white lies because the little white lies become the truth, right? Because that's anything repeated long enough becomes the truth, even when it isn't. Many people, guys, are operating from software that was installed decades ago, and they never question it. They simply call it into reality. They simply call it into reality because they look at it, they never question things along the lines. I remember um, as I started going through the separation in my first marriage and then into the divorce, it was um, it was interesting the things that I had to look at, right? The words and then the definitions that I had with them, right? Of faith, of church, of family, of marriage, of family unity, of those things, right? I was raised in a family where my parents met in the third grade. My parents met in the third grade and they were elementary school sweethearts, right? And then they married 18, 19 years old. Then when dad was in the army and they traveled for like 10, 12 years or so before my oldest brother was born, and then three of us boys. And so they were like 63 years together, and then dad passed away, and right, so the marriage and stuff had its program, right, for me. The same faith, the same church, right, for generations and generations and generations. So that was programmed into me. As I grew older and got into thinking, can't say for myself, but got into analyzing that software, analyzing that program, if you will. And I started realizing that some of the program didn't work for me. Right. And so before, where I never questioned it, and just brought it into reality. Now I started questioning and it started bringing up new things, right? So think of it this way, guys. Imagine a thermostat that is set at 68 degrees. Okay. That's a great temperature for some, it's very cold for others. Right. Imagine it. Now you can open the window, you can turn on heaters, you can temporarily raise the temperature, but eventually everything returns back to that 68 degrees. Why? Why? Because it's that thermostat that controls the environment. The thermostat controls the environment. Most people treat goals like heaters. They create motivation, right? We talked about vision boards, excitement, going to a seminar. I've even talked about, coming from Monday to Monday to Monday, right? New plans, new strategies. But guess what? The internal thermostat remains unchanged, and therefore they eventually return to the familiar patterns. This is why you repeat cycles, financial cycles, relationship cycles, health cycles, business cycles. The environment changes, but the operating system does not. Therefore, the thermostat inside you wins. Always, always. Because it was at that time of my divorce, and that was the realization that changed my life. Because I stopped asking, how do I work harder? And I started asking, what software is creating these results? What system inside me? What thermostat? What temperature am I regulating? What am I putting back? Right? You guys know the story of the comfort zone, right? Okay, the comfort zone from older times, those of you that are young and listening to this, you may not even understand what this means because we don't have digital, or we didn't have digital then. So the old thermostats, right, they were the twist. So some of you that are young, you can go to grandma's house and let's see it on the wall still. But it turned when you take the top off of that or the cover off of that, then what did you see behind it? Right, it was a balance system in there, a spring system. It even had the mercury in there, right? But when you look at the dial, there was a section on there. Some of them that were red, were marked out in color, and it would say comfort. So it was between a certain temperature and a certain temperature that no heater was on and no air conditioning. And that's not even good English. The heater and the air conditioning were off, but it was a comfort. So nothing was happening in that, right? You've heard that story. So I started looking at it going, okay, so what is driving all of these things? What is driving all of these things for me? And that's where I started getting into mentoring and showing people how to change their lives, how to get involved with a movement, how to understand the you got to change your you got to change you got to change your behaviors, you got to change to be able to generate money. It's not just easy to go to a program, spend 40, $50,000, and some of them are $100,000 or even 10, 15, $20. Who cares? But it's not just that you can read a book and then go on and read a book and go on if you haven't taken care of the internal. That's where I came up with finally pulling it all together, guys, is the Aloha Operating System, because that's not just about motivation. It isn't about hype. It isn't about every Monday night. It's not about positive thinking. It is about conscientious installation. Okay. It is about uh, 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 um, calm, intentional, right? Because every system produces predictable results. I've always said, right? Success is no secret. It's a formula, but it's also a system, right? Because every system produces a predictable result. A poor operating system produces chaos, where a strong operating system produces alignment. A poor operating system produces stress, and yet a strong operating system produces clarity. A poor operating system reacts. A strong operating system responds. See the difference in that, reacting and responding. Those are two different things. Most people spend their lives trying to force results. Write that down. Most people spend their lives trying to force results. The AOS practitioner spends their lives improving systems. That's the difference. And it's that difference that changes everything. Changes everything, right? We mentioned before that change happens in a nanosecond. In a nanosecond, it just happens. It's what people fear before change and after change, what they need to do to get ready for change, and then what they need to do to reinforce what they changed, right? And it's that system that they're changing. If you understand that if you look at your operating system, what software you're running, if you have the incorrect software, you're always going to be frustrated with your computer. If you have the correct software, it goes smoother. Doesn't mean it's without glitches, but it goes smoother. Okay. So I want to give you three questions. And question number one is this. Write these down. Question number one is, what belief underneath, apologize, I got ahead of myself. Question number one is, what belief keeps appearing in my life? What belief keeps appearing in my life, right? Not the circumstances, the belief underneath the circumstances. Why am I always broke, right? That's a circumstance. Okay. Why am I not successful? That's a circumstance. I want you to go deeper, right? Deeper. What belief keeps appearing in your life below the circumstance? Okay. Now, question number two, who installed that? Where did it come from? Family, school, culture, past experiences? Who installed that? Let me give you an example. My mom's definition or operating system of money was that money was pompous evil and made you cocky and so forth. And so to have money meant that you were it was like better than somebody, what do they call it? Holier than thou. You look down upon people because you had money. So that was installed into me. It wasn't until I started looking at those systems that I realized that that truly is false. For me, it wasn't for my mom, but for me, that was very, very false, right? So who installed that? Where did it come from? Came from family, came from the culture I was raised with, and so forth, right? And then I had to look at it, which is question number three. Would I install that belief today if I had a choice? Question number one, what belief keeps appearing in my life under the circumstances? Question number two, who installed that belief? Question number three, would I install that belief today if I had a choice? Because most people have never asked themselves that question. Would I intentionally install that software today? And if the answer is no, then perhaps it's time for an update on your software. But let me throw this out. Which was a big struggle for me because there's one of the 10 commandments for those of you that follow that says, honor thy father, thy mother. And I looked at things that as I was changing my programming, right, as I was updating the software and pulling in the operating system, I looked at some of the things that were completely off, or that what I was going to do was going to be completely opposite of what my parents had taught me. And in the beginning, that then started that conflict of, oh, I'm not honoring my parents. Now, as I started looking at the word honor and I started looking at all of those things, I started realizing what it meant for me to move through it. But I had yeah, I'm going to use that battle. I had to battle a little bit with the whole thing that I'm dishonoring my parents because I'm changing things. And some of you may feel that way. Some of you may be in that position. It's like, well, I can't do that because that doesn't honor my parents. Okay. The question then, and this isn't the top three, but the question I would then throw out, but is it honoring you? Right? So let's go back. Question number three is, would I install that belief today if I had a choice? Would I intentionally install this software today? And again, if that answer is no, it's time for an update. If you think yes, you would do that, then that's great. Then that's great. Is that then going to, is that software getting you, that system getting you where do you want? And I'm almost going to have to say, no, it's not because you're here. Excuse me, you come back every Monday night. You come in, you're looking at different things. You're buying the 7-day reset. You're looking at the books. You're pulling all of that stuff together. So if you're saying to yourself is no, no, my software is okay, that you're lying to yourself. That's another belief. That's another under the circumstances you're lying to yourself as I'm okay. Well, no, who installed that? Right? Who installed that? Because as you get into the new mindset, as you get into the new software, as you get into it, right? I'm now going to call it practitioners, right? A practitioner of the new operating system. And a practitioner mindset understands something very important that life does not improve because information arrives. Life improves because installation occurs. Information is easy. Let me go back over that. Let me go back over that. Life does not improve because information arrives. You don't come to this Monday night and all of a sudden you got new information, right? So that's not going to improve you. What is going to improve you is the installation of that information, right? They always say knowledge is power. That is not true. That is not true. The implementation of knowledge is power. So it's the same thing with practicing your new mindset, your new operating system. The AOS is a simple operating system that comes from calm intention, right? Calm intention. And information is easy. Implementation is rare, right? That's why there's so many hundreds of books, countless seminars, endless videos, all of that stuff that goes on and yet experience very little change. How many, you raise your hand. Apologize, guys. I got a tickle that keeps coming back. How many of you been to seminars, read books, and when you finish, go, that was a great book. Yeah, that was a great seminar. Yes, that was a great video. Yes, that was great motivational. Yes, that was a great podcast. And then you do the same thing over and over and over and over again. So you experience very little change. Okay. The reason is because information was collected. Very powerful, right? Very powerful. But the software was never replaced. It was never replaced. So you stay and keep the same thing. But a practitioner lives differently. They install, they practice, they repeat, they embody, right? And eventually that new operating system becomes natural, just like the old one that you were doing was natural to be negative. It was natural to not have money. It was natural, right, to think, woe was me. It was natural to always be broke. It was natural to have everything falling, truck breaking down. Boy, I apologize. Truck breaking down, car breaking down, washer breaking down, tires going out. It was always versus having system to where now you've got the new operating system is natural. And as that operating system changes, the results begin to change, not because life becomes easier. It's not because life got any easier. It's because you became different. It's because you became different. That's the whole thing that you've got to look at is you are not your circumstances. You are not your history. You are not your current results. You are operating from software. You're operating from an operating system. And the coolest thing about that, guys, is that that software can be updated. That's the whole purpose of this. Again, when I was so tell the story that and some of you heard this and thanks for bearing with me. The When my divorce hit, I had two choices. Okay. And those two choices were set up based on I needed to generate sufficient amount of money to one, take care of myself, two, to pay the bills, three, oh my gosh, three, to pay my child support. Old operating systems would have said to me, or did, get a second job, get a third job, get part-time jobs, get whatever you have. I was generating $6.86 an hour. That was back in 1987, excuse me, 97. And uh, so it was like, okay, great. I was going to work from 6 to 3, 3:30, 6:30, something like that. But anyway, 3. There was a time for me, there was time enough that I could have had a part-time job in the evening, which I did. Part that because I knew I needed to be in sales. Why did I know I needed to be in sales? Is because I had read at one time that if you want to generate a ton of money, get in sales. Okay. Well, that's great. Nobody in my family had ever been in sales, but I was really good at what I've called flapping. Those of you who know me know and call it flapping. I was really good. Gift of gab, my dad called it. So I knew if I got into that, I could start generating different, commission checks and so forth. So I could go that direction and work and pay everything off. Or the second direction I could go was discover why I was operating the way I was operating. Why did the marriage fall apart? Why did, right? All of those things. And so asking those three questions. What is the operating system below the circumstances? Who installed that? Would I install it now? And I took that time. I remember the first part of 1997, it was very lonely, right? It was just myself, cried a lot, yelled a lot, screamed a lot, cursed a lot, drank way too much, was trying to find answers in bottles. And it wasn't until I took some focus and I went to a Barnes and Noble bookstore that was fairly close to my apartment. And I started reading. And what I started understanding was the different operating systems out there. I didn't know what it was. What I realized it was formulas is what I called them in the beginning. And what I'm now realizing over all these years is an operating system. And that successful people, obviously success is defined differently, but successful people run on certain operating systems. Highly educated people, operating system. Highly spiritual people, operating system. Right? Um, massive, massive, massive wealth, operating systems. They had certain operating systems that when you implemented those operating systems, the results happened. The results happened for you, not like them. right? So the operating system was so critical. Over the years, I've fallen in love with the Aloha spirit. That's why I titled it the Aloha Operating System. Because what it is that purpose, right? What it taught me in reading all of that. Let me go back. I apologize. What it taught me in things is that understanding the new operating system would get me the results I was after. Period. End of story. Yes, certain things have systems, or excuse me, have formulas to them, right? When you're running math on running the numbers and so forth on real estate and that kind of stuff, you stay within a formula, but it's an operating system, right? And so this is all set up, and what you guys have got to think is those three. I had you a couple of weeks ago write down some of your definitions and what or excuse me, some of your words and definitions with those and how you put that together and how was you living your life and what your thoughts were. Were you coming from were you coming from reaction or were you coming from calm uh, intuition? Were you coming from calm in just with absolute conscientious uh, uh, reaction or excuse me actions? Okay, so operating looking at your software personally, I want you to think about how you move into alignment. The AOS is set up to help people move into alignment, develop calm authority, okay, and act with intention. And please understand that practitioners of this, okay, understand that something most people never discover. They discover that a better life is rarely created by working harder. A better life is created by operating different. I've always said, the less you do, the more you make. Okay. That doesn't mean you're not working hard. Doesn't mean you're not working hard. Right. It just means that you're operating differently. Because when let's think about it as we go through it a little bit here. Anyone, doctors, I've had opportunities to sit with physicians and high successful financial planners and so forth. Um, and when I'm talking with the doctors, my question to the doctors were always, and will still be, how do you increase your income? And they have two choices: increase their prices, see more people. Bottom line, right? When I talk to real estate investors, the flippers, I talk to them about the same thing, right? Because it's still one and done. You get a house, you fix it, you flip it, you get your cash, you're done. How do you increase? Well, you can tighten up your numbers and you can do more properties, right? So working harder rarely, rarely creates a better life. Operating differently creates a better life. That is without, and that is the biggest message I want to get to you guys is moving forward and taking the thought pattern of looking at your current operating system, right? The invisible software of your life and going, am I working with effective software for myself? Or am I operating on bad software? Am I operating on software that may have served the person who gave it to me or installed it, but it does not work for me? And if it's not working for me, then I've got to change the software. I've got to update it. I've got to delete that program, install a new program if needed. I've got to have it in a position that my life is so critical that I've got to update this software. Right? I teach all the time. I need a good operating system on my computer because for my computer, I have presentation. If my computer's not working, I don't have a good presentation up on the screen for the people that have paid to be with me. So it's so critical that in the business that generates income for one side of my business, that I have to have a critically perfect, if you will, operating system on my computer. Well, isn't your life more important than that? And yet we just keep going through, well, that's the way it is. We've always been like that, right? Williams comes from this, Smith comes from this, my generation, right? Farmers, truckers, I don't care. We've always been this. We've always been poor. Nobody in my family's ever had money. We've always struggled. Well, on and on and on. I don't care. And because what you're telling me is I'm okay with the operating system that's inside and it's continually getting back to that thermostat as it continually controlling my life and bringing me back to 68 degrees. You want something different? Be different. Create a better life by creating a different operating system, by operating differently, by getting yourself in. Whether that's I have to do a short, a tight right kick in the ass movement, then get the 7 day reset. Spend 19 bucks on yourself, get that 7 day reset, start operating differently because you put that 7 day reset into play each day. Now you're doing something different than you ever have. And after 7 days, now you're moving in a new operating direction. It's that simple. It's that simple. Don't set it up and think that I can come here every Monday night, which I'm grateful that you do. But don't think you can come here every Monday night and then go from Monday to Monday to Monday and opt differently because in between Monday, Tuesday to Sunday night, you allow the old operating system, the old software to keep crashing. And then you get here Monday and you go, yeah, that's great. I'm all excited. And then you start it all up again on Tuesday and you let it crash. What you're going to find out, excuse me, what you're going to find out is that after it crashes so long, the entire system will give up. The entire system will give up. So why don't you control it? Why don't you change it right now? Okay. A better life is created by operating differently. Learn what your software is telling you now and learn where you need to update it. Thanks so much for spending time with me, guys. I'm so grateful to you. Every week is a blessing to me. I downside of these is I don't get to see your beautiful faces out there on the Zoom blocks. Um, but I am so grateful for everything that you guys bring into my life. Mahalo, and as I've heard him say so many times, mahalo plenty, right? And with that, aloha, I love you. Mahalo, yahui hoi.